What's good? What's good? I'm back. Yours truly, one and only Paul Pickett, host of the Paul Pickett Podcast, aka Triple P, aka the Common Sense Podcast, your source for music, sports, politics, world events, and much, much more. Today I'm going to react to controversy around the Cleopatra Docuseries with Jada Pinkett basically put out. And I'm going to react to a video from Greg Foreman, Black Conservative Perspective. I'm going to get my take on it. Before I do, though, I want to give you a word from Dizzle brand premium luxury liqueur. Let's get into it.
That Dizzle ain't no joke, got me addicted, ain't no coke. Let's just have a toast. Anybody want some smoke? Cause it's up, I be Dizzled up. Catch me sipping with my double cup. Can't just have one, you gotta double up. You pour it, gotta watch it bubble up. I ain't gon' lie, I cannot get enough. When Callie said I need another one, gon' have you coming back for more. But go get it while it's hot, before it be sold out in your stores. That Dizzle.
That's right. That Dizzle. Dizzle is a premium luxury liqueur mixed with agave, tequila, French cognac, and orange liquor mango mix. Throw your Dizzle on ice, and it's nice. If you want to order your very own bottle or bottles, go to dizzlebrand.com, click on our locations, click on one of the top 3 website links. I recommend Emilio's Beverage. Below that is locations. Oh, yeah. Also, don't forget, you must be 21 and over. Shipping and handling is included. And below that is locations in California, Oklahoma, Kansas, and the #1 selling state for Dizzle right now, Arkansas. We got about tons of commercials running right now, radio for Dizzle brand in Arkansas. So definitely, if you're Arkansas, go get your very own bottle of Dizzle brand. All right, let's pull up the custom layout. Let's get into it. Cleopatra Docuseries.
Of Egypt, 639 AD. Cleopatra lived way before the invasion of the Arabs in 639 AD. Black folks was in Africa. Black folks was running a lot of kingdoms in their own homeland. If anybody...
I got to stop him a second. This is the problem when you get into conversations. It's like the same conversation that people are having around Jerusalem. Egypt was conquered in the BCs. Egypt was conquered multiple times in the BCs, if I'm not mistaken. So Egypt wasn't first conquered in the ADs. Now, I get where he's trying to go with this. He's really just trying to take a shot at Arabs, but let's keep it moving.
Trying to take history is the Arabs. Why are you trying to steal our history?
What I say, I knew it. This is really a shot at Arabs, because actually Alexander the Great, based on what history has told us, is he conquered it, or Greeks conquered it in the BCs. You know, which is really, if I'm not mistaken, Cleopatra. Let me see when Cleopatra, let me look up Cleopatra's reign. I just want to be specific on this. Reign dates. 51 to 30 BC. See, this is the thing. I don't get his argument. He had to go. He should have went back a little further. I think his argument would be more valid if he goes where I'm going to end up going with this. But
Flick was right. Cleopatra was a black woman. But I also want to pay attention to something. Why do you have a problem with the black woman playing Cleopatra because you stole black people's history, but you never had a problem with Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra, a white woman?
That's where he messed up again. They actually did. And I do. Like it's kind of like Gods of Egypt, man. You got Gerard Butler and that blonde haired dude playing Egyptian gods. The only one that looked like close to Egyptian in that movie probably was my man that played Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, is the only one that looked anywhere near being close to being Egyptian and in that movie. Then they had a chick that was like, I want to say she was Asian part. She's like half Asian playing an Egyptian. But I think a lot of people got the wrong arguments on this. Let's keep it moving.
Hi, for the lady that said, we don't care what you've learned in the schools, Cleopatra was black. Well, we do not care back. We do not care what is your agenda. We do not care what you are promoting for. Egyptians were never black. We can see this before our own eyes here and now. If you think
I disagree with what she just said right there, that Egyptians were never black, but let's keep it moving.
that you not giving a damn about the facts will change anything, we do not care. We do not care. We actually don't care. What you're thinking about never concerns us.
Egyptians are now being called out as racists, just because they are attacking the new Netflix documentary that is faking history by portraying ancient Egyptians and Queen Cleopatra as black. Despite the fact that Queen Cleopatra was of Macedonian origins, which definitely denies the fact that she was black. But why no one ever mentioned that faking history, blackwashing it, and stealing someone's identity is a kind of racism too?
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Netflix's woke Cleopatra docuseries.
Before he gets in, you know what I think is going on here? I've said this before, though. Like, when it comes to, like, things like slavery, it's like I've said before, like, why haven't people attacked Mongolians for oppression? Like, Mongolians conquered more, like, they conquered more territories and more land than anybody and more people than anybody. I think I've said that about Arabs too. Arabs have done a lot of conquering through the years. Turkish have done a lot of conquering through the years. Like, why is it that people only call out American culture as oppressors? And there's a lot of cultures that have conquered and oppressed, as people say, and enslaved. And slavery has been going on ever since the population has been at a certain point, and people felt they've had the power to enslave people, you know, because it's usually like people always say it's evil people that enslave people. I think it's not just really evil people, it's people that are more aggressive in their tactics, and then they enslave people that are more peaceful. It's like less peaceful. It's like non-peaceful people enslaving peaceful people is usually what happens a lot, you know. But it seems like now that it across the world, people are trying to call out cultures who have conquered and enslaved and oppressed now, because Arabs have enslaved a lot of people in history as well. Let's keep it moving.
That is generating a whole lot of controversy because, once again, we have Netflix race swapping characters or historical characters as a way to virtue signal, and it's really pissing people off because people are getting sick and tired of the double standard that is so prevalent in our society when it comes to this issue of race swapping, okay? Because people know that if you race swap out a so-called person of color for a white person or a lighter skinned person, there's gonna be a whole lot of backlash, right? That's just unacceptable. You can't do that. However, between Disney, Netflix, a whole lot of these other woke media companies, They have no issues race swapping out historically white characters or white characters, originally white characters, and making them so-called people of color. And it's
I agree with what he just said, and he said it, not me. Let's
really
keep it moving.
pissing people off. Okay, people are getting sick and tired of the double standard and the virtue signaling wokeness, and people are expressing their frustration with Netflix by basically.
Let me pause. It is a double standard, you know. And like I just said earlier, I don't like. I couldn't stand guys in Egypt. Like they got blind haired, California beach looking bum Egyptian. Actually, I think old boy is actually British. So blind hair British get cat playing Egyptian. You got Gerard Butler, who, if I'm not mistaken, Gerard Butler is from like New Zealand or something, playing Egyptian. Yeah, I didn't like those either. I don't like that either. So this idea that everybody likes white people playing Egyptians is horseshit. It's bogus. It's not, to me, it's not realistic and authentic either, you know? And that's the thing though, like a movie like Gods of Egypt though should have never really meant to have been authentic, because they had gods flying in the air and putting on magic suits, and you know they were like giants, and the everybody else was super small, and each one had magical powers, and so it was embellished in fantasy. Once you start getting embellished in fantasy anyways, I don't know that it really matters what race people are. But if we're talking about a docuseries, historical documents and a docuseries, yeah, I could understand people wanting it to be authentic. And I don't really care if Cleopatra was black or if she was Greek, but I do care to know the truth, the exact details, the proper details for context purposes. I do care to know the truth. The devil is in the details, and I do care about truth, not his truth, her truth, their truth, the truth. Let's keep it moving.
Basically giving the new Queen Cleopatra series the worst audience score in television history. Now, if you guys are not familiar with Cleopatra, she was the queen of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. She was the last of the Hellenistic rulers over Egypt, the Hellenistic period basically being from Alexander the Great to Cleopatra, who ruled Egypt from, I believe, 50 BC to like 30 or 31 BC or something like that. But yeah, she was basically the last of the Greek rulers of Egypt. And after her death, it brought in the rulership of the Roman Empire in Egypt. Okay. And it's commonly accepted that she was of Macedonian, primarily Greek, right, descent, and had a little bit of Iranian in her as well, too. That is the commonly accepted scholarly explanation of her lineage, of her race. However,
and based on that would mean she's Arab and Greek. And I mean, you know, and this is the thing though. This is where I think the argument is lost on both sides. She wasn't African and she wasn't Egyptian. She was neither. She was neither. It's like people arguing and fighting over what race she was. Egyptian people were upset because people were saying she's black. Egyptians are saying she was basically what he's saying, which means that she has some Arab in her. So I guess that's what they're taking claim of, is that the Arab side of her and whatnot. But she's not Egyptian, nor is she African. So it's like neither one of them really have a dog in the fight and whatnot. Let's keep it moving. If it does, come on, play.
Netflix decided that they were going to go super woke and that they're going to make Queen Cleopatra black. Okay, they're going to make her a black African queen. Okay, they took the word African and essentially said, you know what, we're going to make her black. And people are pissed off with this because, once again, this is just an example from Hollywood of their hypocrisy when it comes to this
Hollywood.
issue of race swapping. Well, first and foremost, again, they're trying to pass off a historically accurate docuseries as, again, if it's factual, right? And essentially they're trying to erase whiteness from history because, again, if you guys have ever seen Macedonian people or Greek people, some of them can be, dark skinned ish, but for the most part, they're pretty light skinned. Okay, they're pretty light skinned
Yep.
to white. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that chances are that Cleopatra was not a dark skinned black African lady, right? I'm just saying, I personally don't give a damn about her race, okay? Just like I really
Like I
don't care
said,
about the race of Jesus, okay? They have a big debate about that as well, too. But was Jesus actually black?
and you know what? I'm with him. I don't care either, but I'm with him on this. I think he's going to say the same thing I'm going to say. We do know that Jesus more likely was not white.
Okay, or was Jesus white? I personally think that most likely Jesus was probably similar looking to the people that live in the region today, right? He probably looked like an Arab, okay? And Arabs range from dark to very light, okay? So
And I agree with that just because the time of Jesus. That's the thing you got to take into account, the time. Like, nobody's taking account the time of when you're trying to do this like argue about this Cleopatra thing. Like, I honestly think the mistake that Jada Pinkett made was she should have did a docuseries on Nefertiti. And now this girl that they have playing Cleopatra looks more like Nefertiti than she does Cleopatra. That's the problem with this. Cleopatra is not African, nor is she, you know, Egyptian. And that's the thing. Like, when you're over there, over in countries like that, overseas, it's like even when you conquer something, it's like the Vikings conquered the UK, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure they at some point started calling themselves British and whatnot. Like, once you live there after so long, you just pretty much, that's what you start calling yourself. Because, like I said in one of my last podcasts, they don't call them, like in France, they don't be like African French, or you can't move from another country and call yourself you don't call yourself Chinese French or African French or Indian French or Turkish French. No, once they move there and they start living there, they're just French, you know. And that's the thing. Like, once people started conquering it, once they conquered Egypt, then they just basically called themselves Egyptians. And that's really what goes on. It's what's going on here. And from what I've seen, and gathered, that Egyptian culture was built by multiple cultures. Early, like, it was like 2 or 3 cultures that came together and built Egyptian culture. Because I don't think people were technically living in that part of Egypt heavily at first, compared to that part of Africa, compared to like South Africa, West Africa, and whatnot. Like, and I know they said that it was a lot greener back in the days in Egypt, but there's been desert for a long time in Egypt too. And I think around Cleopatra's time, there was no green. It was just probably, I think it was more desert, like done took over. The Nile River wasn't really the same and things of that nature, you know. I think a lot of that evaporated during the time of Moses and stuff like that, which I don't even know if Moses was technically real. because I don't know, like, what does Egyptian culture say about Moses? Like, not what does the Bible say about Moses. What does Egyptian culture say about Moses? But I think they should have did this docuseries about Nefertiti. I think that's where Jada Pinkett Smith went wrong. She should have went with Nefertiti, who was a lot earlier in Egyptian culture. They brought in a lot of the radical religious stuff. They were supposedly the richest era for Egyptian culture. Nefertiti looks more like the girl they have playing Cleopatra than the girl playing Cleopatra looks like Cleopatra. Especially based off the coins and the statues. If those coins and statues are really Cleopatra, I mean, she does look like a Greek Caucasian woman, European white woman. But Nefertiti looks more like an African woman. She looks more like an African woman. And Nefertiti was actually Pharaoh too. So I think that's where they went wrong with this. They should have went a lot earlier. You can't go so far in the story where this place has been conquered so many times. That's not like, it's not at its most authentic time of history. Like, it's really at its most authentic time in history when the culture is first created. They first derive the culture and create the culture from its very beginnings of Egyptian culture. And I think people undersell how old Egyptian culture really is just because of how long these pyramids have lasted. And then there's the people who wore the mask all the time. Like, we don't really know what races were them. And the picture of Pharaoh Medes, if you look up Pharaoh Medes, they got a picture of him next to Mike Tyson, and he clearly looks like an African brother. Clearly looks like African. Clearly looks like Mike Tyson and him clearly got similarities and whatnot. So, yeah, this idea that Egyptians were never black, I think, is bogus. I think Egyptian culture might, been a little bit more diverse than we thought. Especially if 2 or 3 cultures came in. Like they said, from what I've gathered, they said it was the Nubian culture, Neolithic culture, and the Arabic culture. Now, that would make a very long time ago if you included the Neolithic culture, I would think. Which Neolithic, I don't know if it was really a culture more than a Bronze era or the Steel era or whatnot. I don't know if it was more like the Bronze era, like everybody was just like, like builders and stuff like that. But if you had 2 or 3 cultures that came together to start one culture, I would think the culture is pretty diverse. And Africa apparently has always been more diverse than we think. Because if man began in Africa, there has always had to been some form of diversity that has came about at some point. Because you have so many different, I don't even like to call us different races, because it's different cultures: Asian culture, Indian culture, European culture, African culture, even Australian. It's its own culture, Aborigines and stuff like that. The Spanish culture, I would say, because Spain created, they did a lot of conquering in their days in South America and whatnot. And what's crazy is that they could have just went further up north and just found North America, it seems like. But Yeah, I think they should have did Nefertiti, not Cleopatra. She's so far down in the Egyptian culture. She's like they said, she was the last, I guess, Egyptian queen before the Romans took over. And Romans are Italians, but that's the thing. Greeks conquered before that, and somebody conquered probably before the Greeks. I guess they're saying Arabs conquered later. I guess they're trying to say Arabs conquered after the Romans, I'm guessing. Um, but we don't know if the Arabs conquered before the Greeks and then the Greeks conquered them. We don't know. Like Nubians conquered, they said at one point. So definitely Egyptians were black if Nubians conquered, especially if the conquerors are automatically claiming to be Egyptians, which is, I think, the same thing going on in Israel. Like Israel, the people of Israel today are not the people that inhabited that land originally. The people of Israel today are a mixture of a lot of different European cultures, I would say. A lot more of a lot of European cultures. Because, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the French have conquered it. The Arabs conquered it. That's another thing. Arabs are... and Arabs said that they had it originally. That's the thing. And that's what they're saying with Egypt. Like, we don't know when there's so much conquering going on here. According to the Bible, the first time Israel was conquered was by King David, who was Hebrew, who wasn't Caucasian. Hebrews weren't Caucasians. And that's the thing. Like, definitely, like, whoever built the pyramids is not the same people that are from Israel today. I don't care what anybody says on that. It's not. They're not. They're not. Because at that time, I think that was Africans enslaving Africans. Or it was Arabs enslaving Arabs. But Egypt's just been conquered so many times, and we don't know exactly how old it is. But definitely, I hate to see this, though. I really hate to see this because I love Egyptian culture more than anything. Egypt is like one of my favorite. The pyramids, it's just like one of my favorite things to talk about, Egyptian culture. It's just so fascinating. It's got this, just a little mystic kind of, view. Like it's just so much we don't know still to this day about Egyptian culture. I still don't think we know exactly how old Egyptian culture is. I still don't think we fully can comprehend how they built the pyramids and the way this culture originally started. And I think we're so far disconnected. That's the thing. We're so far disconnected from history. And when you think of history, history is just two words made up as one. His story. It's two words put together as one. As his story comes about every time, as there's a new his story and a new his story and new his story, we don't know how many times the stories get watered down, how much the details change, and I just think there's some things that we'll just never ever know. But yeah, this one ain't going too well for Jada Pinkett. It's definitely caused more racial tension, which is apparently just what people thrive off every day, is just looking at everything through a racial lens, breeding racism, race hustling. Like when you talk about everything through a racial lens every single day, all you do is breed racism. If you literally call I honestly think this. If you take a person who's just clearly not racist and you just every day get up every single day, like you're their neighbor and you get up every single day and you're like, more than you racist fuck. I think after a while, you're going to make them racist towards you. Even if they were not racist, I think after a while, they're just going to get tired of it. That they're going to start acting racist towards you. And so I think people are honestly out here breeding racism. They're breeding it into life. They're bringing it towards life. They're creating racism out of nothing, and breeding more, breeding racism from nothing. Because, I mean, it's got to be exhausting every day to just look at everything through a racial lens. To just have to judge every single person and every single situation and every issue that comes about through a racial lens. Every mistake you make, personally, you judging it through a racial lens. It's like, what? It's crazy, I've heard enough on this, but I'm gonna let him just speak a little bit more.
I'm just saying, this is a never-ending conversation and controversy.
It is.
And we all know what Netflix is doing here. Okay, they're trying to score woke virtue signal points, right, in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion, by essentially trying to blackwash history. And the problem with this is that this is so unnecessary because they were actually, or allegedly they were, again, people can fact check me on this if you think I'm wrong, there were actually, black dynasties, like, for example, the 25th dynasty of Egypt, okay, that ruled Egypt. They were Nubian, okay, Kushnites. Why don't you just use them, right? You could have told that story, made them black, and there would have been less controversy, right?
He went where I went with it. See, this is how common sense works. That's why I said they should have just went with Nefertiti. I mean, you clearly look at the sculpture of Nefertiti, and she definitely looks like an African woman. She doesn't look Greek. I can tell you that much. She doesn't look like the statues of Cleopatra. In my opinion, Cleopatra is overrated. She's overrated in Egyptian history. What did she really do? She doesn't even look that attractive based on her sculptures. They just say she was like, I guess based on from what I could gather, she was a whore. She could bend men to her will because she was a whore. I mean, the ugliest woman in the world can bend men to her will if she just wants to seduce women. It just seems like she was a seduction artist, which basically is a whore. Yeah, so I've heard enough. I think they should have went with Nefertiti. They probably wouldn't have this backlash if you went with Nefertiti. And then again, based on what that one Egyptian girl said, and based on what Egyptians believe, I guess you will have this backlash. Because that one girl said that Egyptians were never black. I disagree with that. And my man Greg Foreman pretty much disagree with that as well, and I would probably argue that Nubians or West Africans were involved in Egyptian culture from the beginning, especially even if it was multiple cultures like people suggest or say started Egyptian culture. And I would almost think that you might just thinking about what Egyptian culture has accomplished with the pyramids and just the things they built. I would think you probably would have needed multiple cultures to come forth and do something like this. And then you got to think this is the time when nobody probably looked at anybody based on skin color. It probably nothing was done on skin color. And a lot of people suggest that other cultures don't know as much just because language barrier. I think language barriers make those improper suggestions that one culture might be less smarter than the other. I don't like to use words like superior or inferior, but less educated or less smarter. And I think that only applies maybe to maybe like some little small culture in the middle of an island somewhere, or they don't have access to educate themselves properly, But then again, I could be wrong on that too. I just think like it's sad to see this, people arguing and fighting over Egyptian culture. I just like to just appreciate Egyptian culture. I don't really care what the race of the people is that build Egyptian culture. The thing I care more about is knowing like how did they really build the pyramids? How do they? No matter what race of people these are, culture people, whatever. No matter what their skin color is, it is just amazing and fascinating to me. Building the pyramids, it's just like it's amazing. It's fascinating. It's just who cares what skin color they are? Let's just appreciate it. And now docuseries though, I could get like Jada should have went with. I'm saying Jada should have went with Nefertiti, or like my man said, the Kush. Somebody earlier in Egyptian civilization, not after they've been conquered by other cultures and other civilizations so many times. Towards the very end, when they've been conquered, when we clearly know that at that point, Greeks done conquered, Romans done conquered, Arabs have probably done conquered. If I'm not mistaken, didn't the Turkish go in and conquer Egypt one time? I mean, they might have been conquered at least a half a dozen times. Like Jerusalem has probably been conquered at least a half a dozen times. And then I seen the one the other day about Roman civilization that exists. I find that hard to believe too. I find that hard to believe. I really do. I find that hard to believe. I think they might have been over embellished. They apparently just had a great military force, and that's the thing. When you have a great military force, that's what Genghis Khan was great for. I mean, he was conquering military warfare on horseback with a bow and arrow like no other. But it wasn't like. Like Romans couldn't even they had to get food from Egypt and Africa. It wasn't like they had a lot of resources and they could fend for themselves. They pretty much had to conquer. They had to conquer, do what they did, or they probably would have been low on the totem pole because they couldn't barely provide their own food. And when you're a country that could barely provide your own food, what's left there to do? Trade and barter, which typically has you under the thumb of somebody else, or conquer. Not a lot of options in there. And that's the thing, man. Like, I always looked at Romans like, damn, they was a little overrated because they had to get their food from other places. But they did have a pretty good military force until they had to face Hannibal Barca. I think his name is. I think it's Hannibal Barca. Hannibal was like this African general that went through these mountains and did the unthinkable, did the unthinkable. He was from Carth, an African general from Carth, where Romans used to get a lot of their food and stuff like that from. And that's the thing, like this idea that Romans were superior when they relied on other people to feed them. Unless they was doing conquering, they wasn't looking too superior at all. Once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. Paul Pickett Podcast, and I'm out.